Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today I'm going to introduce you all to Gleb Yushin, who's the co founder and CTO of Sila Nanotechnologies. Sila is an engineered materials company focused on dramatically improving energy storage to power the world's transition to clean energy. He is also a professor at the Schools of Materials and Engineering at Georgia Tech and the editor in chief of the trade publication Materials Today. Professor Yushin has co authored more than 210 US and international patents and patent applications, and more than 180 peer reviewed publications on nanostructured materials for energy related applications that have collectively earned more than 20,000 citations. Thank you for coming on the show, Professor.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, I mean, wow, what a background. It's the first time that we're going to have an academic, truly an expert of the field. So can you just walk us through your career and how you got to this point?
Yes, absolutely. So I was born in Russia, and ever since I was a teenager, I've been fascinated by art, science, and innovation. And Soviet Union was very strong in science and art, but weak in the ability to innovate. So after internal debate about choosing between art and science, I decided to study physics in Polytechnic Institute while conducting experiments at the OFA Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences. So, but at the same time, the Soviet Union was collapsing, and there was no money left to fix expensive equipment, let alone buy a new one. And without resources, you cannot do experimental science. So, what should I do? Um, well, I had a choice between switching my career from sciences to business or immigrating. And I was a top student in my school, and EOFA Institute was the #1 place in the Soviet Union to do physics. And because of this, I had good publications. So I thought maybe I have a chance to get into graduate school in other countries, and that could be an adventure. But where should I go? So I talked to many scientists, about Asia, mostly Japan, about Europe, mostly Germany, and the US. And I learned that the culture in Asia would be maybe too different to adapt. And also learned that Europe at the time was maybe less friendly to immigrants, and there was some sort of invisible ceiling for careers in sciences if you're not native. So the US, as a land of opportunities and immigrant-friendly country, and leader in both science and innovation, was a natural choice for me. So I moved to America. And maybe I should also mention that in the last few years of studying physics, I realized that most of the greatest things in physics were discovered well before I was born. And so the chances for me, I don't know, to get a Nobel Prize were not very high. So I wanted to switch to a younger field of materials, as it was kind of an intersection between physics, chemistry, electrical engineering. And I also thought materials are a very versatile field, in the sense that if you deeply understand fundamentals of material science, you can apply your knowledge in literally any other field, because you need better materials everywhere. So I would have more freedom to decide what to do next once I earn my PhD. And this was very appealing. I want to always broaden my future choices. So I went to NC State, and after graduating, I tried to get a job in industry. But in 2003, there was a hiring freeze. And so it was almost impossible for me to get a job in all the places that I wanted to work in. So essentially, nobody wanted me there. And I didn't want to come back to Russia. So what should I do? At NC State, I was taking several business classes, and I thought that maybe building a startup could be another adventure. So, I always wanted to innovate. So I thought maybe I can get a postdoctoral position in another university, and, I could help develop and maybe commercialize some technologies. The salary of a postdoc is maybe 1/3 of what industry pays. But to me, that was okay because, it would broaden my education and my opportunities further. So I kind of searched for recent at the time, high impact publications, and contacted several professors that led these studies, including Yuri Gagotze at Drexel University. And so I got a job offer to join his lab and work on nanostructured materials for broader range of applications in electrochemistry, gas storage, biology, medicine. And I also started to attend lectures in the Drexel School of Business and talk to entrepreneurs and kind of learn more about startups. And over 3 years at Drexel, I co-developed several promising material families, and wanted to license them to start a company with Yuri, with my professor. But Drexel licensing office was maybe a little bit too slow and sometimes unreasonable, and they seem to have no incentives to do it. So I faced the same question again. What should I do? So at that time, I kind of started to like academia more, and I thought maybe I could apply for a tenure track professor position in another school. And if I get it, maybe I can start from scratch, develop new material technologies, and do startup there. And that's what I did. I got several offers, including one from Georgia Tech, which I accepted. And it's such a fantastic engineering school with outstanding centralized fabrication facilities, outstanding centralized characterization facilities, very collaborative faculty. So when I joined Georgia Tech, I started to work on novel and broadly available materials that could significantly improve performance of lithium-ion batteries, but were known to degrade. And maybe I should mention that historically, the battery scientists were experts in physics or electrochemistry, but not necessarily in materials. So in my group, we focused on use the knowledge of material science and facilities available at Georgia Tech, and achieved multiple breakthroughs. And at that time, I thought these new materials have a chance to be commercialized. In the meantime, even though I had a desire, I had no experience in the industry or startups. So I was looking for co-founders who had such experience. And I met many people, which is not easy if you're an introvert. And through a mutual friend, Dan Stengart, I eventually found two amazing co-founders, Alex Jacobs and Jim Berdichevsky, and together we started Sila and Georgia Tech Technology Incubator, and eventually moved to Silicon Valley to grow faster. And by now, Sila grew to almost 400 people. We have over 1 million of cool electronic devices powered by our technology in the market. For several years now, we have several automotive contracts, including one which was publicly announced recently by Mercedes-Benz. And so, the world is transitioning to this renewable energy, and our advanced technologies can power and accelerate such a transition. And that's how I became a CTO, I guess.
I love that story, Gleb, and it's amazing. And you say it so calmly, but from an outside, perspective, it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, I grew up in a certain country, knowing a certain language, knowing a certain culture, and saying, I'm going to leave and go somewhere completely across the globe to a whole different, country, and starting from scratch, and then just going forward and going after your dream. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's really kind of the old school American dream story, where an immigrant comes over and really may have not much in their pockets, but they have the chance to do whatever they want to do and succeed. So it's just, this is like such a great story.
Well, thank you. I think when you're young, you're very naive, so you don't know all the challenges you face.
That's a good point, because part of it, I could say that, hey, you're just being, self-deprecating, but there is some validity to it, because when you're young, you really, you think you're going to live forever, you're indestructible, right? And maybe that's a good thing too, that you do it when you're young, because you don't realize, like, all right, what could go wrong?
Yeah, and in that aspect, that there was a lot of luck involved. So I didn't apply for multiple schools. I applied only to a single school and was lucky to be accepted, but I didn't know I was lucky. I applied to several positions at universities, and competitions is very tough. It's like you have maybe 100, 300 applicants for a single position, but you kind of apply and, eventually maybe you get it. And then you start a company, and eventually you realize that you need a lot of time and funding, but, you're naive. You don't know that you need that. But if you were told in advance, maybe you wouldn't start it in the first place. So naivety sometimes helps.
I like it, because I wonder if you sat down with somebody and said, hey, I'm looking to do, create these batteries that's going to be good for the environment, and then they would list off all the challenges you're going to confront, you may have just said, I'm not going to do this. This is nuts. I'll just be a professor. It's much easier
Exactly.
to do this, right?
Exactly that.
Although I bet there are some days where the professor is like, oh gosh, I should have just stuck to academia, right? Where the day-to-day is just must be so challenging. How did you manage that transition from academia to industry? The inner workings of having to manage other folks, right? To build out entire research and development and other kind of G&A business function departments, to have a functioning kind of corporation. Did you find it easy, challenging? Did you have like a great kind of personal board of directors to help you along?
Definitely not easy.
Okay.
But Jack, to be honest, I feel that sometimes people in academia get detached from reality. They don't consult for industry. They don't understand what is industry relevant and useful, what is not. They get the ideas, what is important from papers published in prestigious scientific journals and written by other professors. And so, and so, and then they write their own papers or proposals, and these get peer reviewed by other professors who may also have no clue. And so creating a bubble. And professors are very rational human beings. They, if they're evaluated by how many grants they bring to universities, how many papers they publish in top scientific journals, or how many citations these articles get, they naturally optimize for that rather than working on what would be most useful for industry or maybe people. And so for me, working for a startup that needs to produce commercial products with good market fit, outcompete many companies that are maybe 1,000 times larger in size, was a little bit of breath of fresh air, because I could see much more clearly where the lack of kind of broad fundamental understanding was particularly painful, or where novel technical approaches could be very impactful. So I could focus on this in my academic studies, and at the same time I could work at Sila and create something valuable, something tangible for many people, help environment, contribute to getting manufacturing industry back to US. But it's definitely not easy, and I have to delegate, have to balance many things. I have to rely on a lot of support. So for many years now, I had a reduced appointment at Georgia Tech, and now I'm on a partial leave of absence from the university. So I'm very grateful to my colleagues, to my school chair, Natalie, our dean, our executive vice president of research, and Georgia Tech president for giving me this opportunity, flexibility to contribute to both. And certainly family support is very important. So definitely not easy, but I somehow manage.
Professor, you've painted a great picture for us to kind of understand the industry, the challenge that Sila is coming in to solve. Can we take a step back and try to dive deeper into your role at the company? I mean, is it your primary responsibility, would you say, to kind of be the scientific mastermind to come up with the concepts? Or are you doing more overseeing of other technologists and more kind of validating their kind of hypotheses or ideas or concepts? Kind of what is that balance there?
I mean, a little bit of everything. Success of Sila, of our company, depends on our ability to innovate. And innovation is not easy, especially in heavy industries where many factories moved overseas in the last 3 decades. So not only you need to invent something particularly valuable, but you also need to turn invention into massive commercial success. And it takes a large team to do it. So, in a company like ours, CTO is broadly responsible for successful innovations. So, my responsibilities include, for example, creating a pipeline of new technologies and future products, ensuring that our current products perform really well in applications and don't face major barriers, to overcome for their adoption, that our customers and partners see value in working with Sila, but also ensuring that our technologies can be scaled to very large volumes economically. So that is like capital expenses, CapEx, operational expenses, OpEx, are become very low at global scale. so the company can build factories and expand rapidly. And then, as the company grows, the job for all executives, including myself, is to work together to outline the goals, prioritize them, ensure alignment, to achieve those goals. And, there are multiple levels of alignment. There is alignment between individuals working on the project, alignment between various departments, but also between our company and our various partners. So to do that, you have to ensure transparency and clear communications. So that ideally everyone in the company should know why we set particular goals, why we prioritize them in a certain way, and how their particular work is contributing to these goals. So simplicity and clarity of the goals are also very important. And then to be successful in achieving these ambitious goals and produce new to the world technologies, CTO and ideally everyone in the company needs to have this ability to recognize talent and recognize good ideas and be able to amplify them. So, this requires both technical and kind of emotional skills, and also a good company culture. And one indication of a good culture is when everybody is focused on the success of the mission. Everyone is eager to work very, very hard, on the best ideas, for the common goals. So, so overall, again, multiple things, contribute to kind of building this well-lubricated innovation engine, within the company that results in building factories, producing products that ideally impact billions of people positively. And to do that, I have to hire great people, amplify the ideas, focus on the highest impact projects, and achieve good alignment between technical and business goals.
I appreciate that insight because, Jack and I, we've interviewed dozens. I think this actually might be our 100th episode. So it's kind of an extra bonus for you, Professor. But
Thank you.
as we've interviewed these CTOs of mostly software companies, a lot of them, they got into tech at an early age because, their parents or a close family or friend member got them their first computer and they were coding at an early age. And so you could see this like nice through line from that kind of personal life and that personal history to where they are today in terms of being, CTOs at some of the most popular or most valuable startup companies. And some of them have told us, I really got into software engineering coding because I loved the practical aspect of actually writing the code and kind of having an idea, writing the code and seeing it out there live. And some of them have confided in us during this show that they really regret, being a CTO where they're coding less often or they're now finding themselves as business executives focusing more time on establishing processes or they're spending maybe half or more of their work week trying to recruit talent to join their companies, especially in the last year when it was so challenging to find that right tech talent.
Mm-hmm.
So I love your perspective in terms of it seems like you're able to kind of combine that passion and that vision that someone might typically expect of a CEO, right? That's responsible for kind of rallying the troops and making sure everyone's on board. But because Sila is so technology focused, that it seems like it's come on your shoulders as a CTO, which is quite a unique background.
Well, in general, I would say in hardware technologies, in heavy industries, technology is moving slower. So it's a little bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint. It could be sprint, once at a time, but, we've been working on this for 12 years now. And so, software companies typically develop much faster. So you have to learn how to step up much sooner. And in many cases, maybe you're not ready. And in our case, we had 12 years to mature, to understand what the job is, and to learn how to collaborate effectively. And so I find my job very fulfilling. So I wouldn't change it for any other.
Just for the audience, and when I say that, I really mean for myself. What if to visualize your product you have out, do you have products that you're delivering to clients or still kind of working to perfect it?
It's both. So,
Okay.
innovations, they never stop. So we have, millions of devices in the wild. In the meantime, we're working for next generation materials. We're working for new product families. So innovation never stop, because once you stop, it's kind of over time, the company dies. I would say that in general, software companies, they grow much faster, but they also can die quite fast. So in hardware, takes longer time to develop, but you have a longer kind of run rate. And so, but in the meantime, if you don't innovate, eventually you will die. There are many large players that see this coming, and they should see the new technology, new innovation coming, and they don't take necessary steps to change technology or to innovate in the field, and eventually they die. It might take, like, instead of a few years, it might take decades for them to die, but it happens. And so you have to prevent that. So definitely innovations never stop at Sila.
And to go back to with the product, are there some examples that we would know of that your batteries are in a car or in some wherever that we could...
Definitely. So there are several devices out there. One was publicly announced, is Whoop 4.0. It's a fitness tracker, quite remarkable fitness tracker. Highly recommended.
I'm sorry, what is it, Professor? It's
Whoop 4.0.
Okay.
It's a fitness tracker. There are other devices that we are not allowed to disclose, but they are out there in the market. Mercedes-Benz announced they are going to be first to use our technology in their vehicles, and they will start with a G-Wagon. It's quite a marvelous car. It's expensive though, but over time they're going to kind of use this latest technology and translate it to other vehicles, maybe initially premium vehicles, and eventually like mass market. Well, I guess with Mercedes, all vehicles are slightly premium, but we are working with multiple other companies, and again, we have additional contracts which I'm not allowed to disclose, and we will disclose over time. But we target the whole electric vehicle market, so we kind of don't discriminate. It's just when you develop technology earlier, it's maybe slightly more expensive, and so more affordable maybe in luxury cars. And then you go to larger scale, so your technology becomes cheaper, and then you go to premium vehicles, and eventually when the technology works really well and the cost becomes very small, there is economy of scale, but also continuous innovation to drive the cost down, then you can target mass market, and so you have lots of cars on the roads, ultimately powered by technology.
How competitive is this space? Are there a large number of other entities similar to yourself, or is it a very small group that are working on this project, this type of project?
I mean, battery field is very competitive, definitely, and it's a good thing. I think competition is great. If there's no competition, there is no progress. And sometimes, when large companies become, quasi-monopolists, they stop being innovative because nobody's pushing them. And then they die because there is a young startup developing something very fast, and people are young and hungry, and they have to compete. They have to outcompete this large company, and they do it successfully. And so I think competition is very healthy. It's very, very good. And so to me, I wish there would be more companies started in this space, because we do need more innovations. And there is so much we can do. With our first product is the anode. We are developing other product families, but it would be great that more companies will join the field. And there are also lots of ideas out there how to produce or manufacture batteries differently. And Tesla, for example, pushing the envelope. They're developing not only the best batteries, but they're also developing the best way to produce batteries. At least they put a lot of effort into that. So it's
well, the best until now. Yeah, you're going to overcome them, I think, right?
We are suppliers to battery companies, and so companies like Tesla would be our customers.
Gotcha.
So we see them as our partners. We are not competitors in any possible way. And I wish companies like Tesla and other EV makers will be more successful, because we do need to accelerate the transition, as fast as we can. And so the more push to do that, the faster it's going to happen, and the faster it's going to be the positive impact on the environment, which is what we're all trying to achieve.
I mean, I want to kind of focus in there, the last bit that you said, right? Because it's a very lofty ambition, or it's a very admirable goal in terms of, gosh, like changing how the world uses energy and making the earth a greener planet. It's very audacious. And I want to go back to, 2012 when you started Sila. When you have such like a ambitious and kind of, I'm just gonna say it, like a little crazy goal to do it. And you need the technology, and maybe the technology or the world just isn't there yet. How do you get folks to invest, right? Did you have to rely on Georgia Tech's incubator program? Were there kind of government grants that you're able to, benefit from? Was it your own personal capital? Um, like, how does someone get started in kind of these like hard sciences, hard tech, when the eventual product or the eventual service is going to be years, maybe even a decade out?
Yeah, maybe if you're a software engineering professor, maybe you can buy your own computer. But
Right.
if you work in material science, professor salary is maybe healthy, but it's not that great. So you can't afford all this expensive equipment. So we definitely had a lot of support, and it was not easy. Most investors did not believe in EV revolution. Most people predicted that even by 2050, there will be only a very small fraction of electric vehicles. And so we had to find much more visionary investors who thought that this EV revolution is coming, electrification is coming, and they would bet on us. And I would definitely say that Georgia Tech helped a lot with incubator space. It was very convenient for me and the team. We had access to this fascinating, great facilities at Georgia Tech. And also government helped a lot. So we received grants from, small grant from NASA, but, much larger grant from ARPA-E, over $3 million. That was instrumental for our success, because, what I learned over the years, that things take longer. And so, and it was much harder. I was maybe naive initially. I thought, maybe we'll get where we are now in maybe 4 or 5 years. And it took us 12 years. So, without government support would be much tougher to get here. And so I'm definitely very grateful for that. But, I would say in the last, 2-3 years, I think the worldview changed. And so now everybody believes in electric vehicles, and people just put in different bets, how fast this revolution is going to happen. And, because of the supply chain challenges, because of the war in Ukraine, this revolution is happening much, much faster. If countries in Europe thought, well, they will electrify by 2040, 2050, now they want to do it much, much sooner, maybe by 2030. And so, and now it becomes easier to raise funding, and we were lucky to exist for a long time, because, we are kind of the best in class. We have, very healthy funding. We have amazing team, and we have the best technology. And so kind of makes it easier for us now. But initially it was definitely very tough. And if I thought that, we would have to raise, $1 billion, and it will take us 12 years to get here, I thought that would be completely unrealistic. I wouldn't even start it. I would definitely doubt myself. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because as Rick was alluding to, we have on the show so many CTOs where within a year or two, sometimes boom, they write this great code, and before you know it, you have VCs just throwing money at them. This is like, a few years back. Now that's really not happening as much. And all of a sudden you have this great unicorn business. But now you, like, as you're talking about it, years of just going through it and not knowing when it's going to hit. And how do you have that mental toughness to say, wow, I'm right? It's not only a marathon, it's like a marathon, it's a Tough Mudder, it's a decathlon all mixed in together, because this is kind of the long game, right? How do you keep mentally strong to say, hey, I'm going to keep persevering and this is could take another bunch of years?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think, if you have an amazing team, it helps a lot. I mean, I would say the life is the marathon as well. Like, you don't want to live your life in a few years. And so to me, I see my job, as a lifelong adventure. So, I try to enjoy it as much as I can. And I enjoy it quite a lot. And sometimes when you work the hardest, you still, they make the largest impact, and, you feel happiest overall. So this, small wins help a lot. Winning customers, figuring out how things work, overcoming challenges are very fulfilling. But they're not easy, and so you have to find a place where you feel comfortable. And I feel very comfortable where I am. Well, I wouldn't say. Actually, I don't feel comfortable where I am, in the sense that, there is always a pressure to deliver, and that's great, because I think when people are feeling too comfortable, it's also bad. There was a kind of famous experiment, I think in Japan, in somewhere in the 80s, when a owner of the company gave a CTO a credit card without limit, with a limited budget, and told him to take as much vacation as he wants, to buy whatever his family wants, so that he can focus on innovation. And at that time, this productivity of the CTO changed dramatically, but with the caveat that it didn't grow, but it dropped instead. And the company still made profits on investment due to publicity, but the conclusion is that we all need some pressure to become better version of ourselves, and contribute to society in a more meaningful way. And maybe I would wish that I would challenge myself even more when I was younger. You have the highest IQ, the highest intellectual potential when you're early 20s. And, I think it's very important to regularly do something useful for yourself, for others, that is outside your comfort zone. So, taking the small steps. But this is important.
I like how you talked about enjoying the journey, because I think it's very relevant in particular. And Rick, tell me if this makes sense for the folks on the blind platform, because oftentimes, they're doing well, they're making a lot of money, but yet they're just kind of, I got to get to that next level. And it almost feels from the outside, they're not really enjoying the journey, because they want to get to that next step. And they're aggravated, and they're, and right, like they're mad almost, and angry and frustrated. Why is this happening? But like your mindset is saying, hey, I'm going to enjoy each step of the way. It's not hitting that ultimate goal that I'm going to say, yes, this is it. It's really each little small victory, you're saying, right? Like celebrate each little step that you succeed. And that's
right.
where it comes in. That's the fun. That's what gets you. Sounds like that's what keeps you motivated. Each incremental increase that you make the battery a little better and a little better. That's where you take joy in that, right? And you appreciate it.
That's right. And I think, a startup is even more special because it's growing over time. So your job description changes all the time, and so you have to level up. While if you're a professor, if you're just a professor, you kind of, you're doing innovative things, creative things, you discover a new science, but the way you do it and what you do are similar, in the sense that you write proposals, write grants, get funding, hire students, you publish papers, you do research, you give presentations, and you kind of repeat it over and over. While in a startup, your job changes, and I think maybe it's also make it much more exciting path.
Now, is there a little bit of danger in that kind of pathway? My understanding of, pharma and biotech, they often have to invest so much capital in terms of, the research, and then obviously the different stages of development before they get that, FDA approval or whatever it might be. Is there a pressure for you where you have to show certain advancements over time in order to unlock the next kind of tranche of funding to be able to continue your vision? Or are you able to kind of operate more independently in a sense?
I think it's quite similar. And I guess, Rick, I would say like pressure is good. Pressure is good for humans and pressure is good for companies. Without pressure, there is no progress or very slow progress.
Right.
So I enjoy it, and I think it's very positive thing for the company of any size. So you have to have it. And again, as I mentioned, if you become monopolist and become too lazy, that's really bad for you, but it's also bad for for humanity. So the pressure is good. I like competition. I like to win, and I like to work hard to do that. And so, and I think it's only a positive thing to do. And it's also good from investors' perspective, right? They don't risk large funding right away. They have to invest slowly, gradually, and so they see where it's going. And if sometimes companies face huge challenge that might be fundamentally impossible to overcome, there is sometimes scientific risks. And when they started, there was a lot of scientific risks. And if you're in science, sometimes you don't know how long it's going to take for you to figure things out. At some point you figure out science and you risks become maybe more engineering risks or more scale-up risks. And so these are maybe more definite, and you can maybe plan, how long it will take to overcome this. But this is the path we choose for ourselves, and it's a good path.
I'm curious. I kind of want to take advantage of our little office hours here. You speak that there has to be this kind of like inner sense and this willingness to kind of basically bet on yourself. Do you have any advice for some of the professionals, the technologists who are listening that might not have developed that grit themselves, that are not willing to kind of take as many risks as you did, right? In terms of your life, moving across the world, betting on yourself in terms of applying to just a few positions available at and some of the top universities and actually earning it and gaining it. What would you say to maybe a student of yours or maybe an entry level professional or just someone that is not quite there yet in their career? How do they get there and how do they get to kind of where you are?
I think small successes help along the way. It kind of becomes a snowball over time, and so there's some skills that kind of you need to develop. And I think tenacity is not one of the skills you can develop. You have to kind of grow it naturally. You cannot put an effort to develop tenacity. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. I didn't think about it before. But I think there are some other skills that young scientists, engineers can develop that would be very helpful. When they grow their careers. Many of them are very smart and they go technically very deep, but sometimes they don't pay enough attention improving their human interaction skills, their presentation skills. Some of the hardest working people I know and some of the smartest don't put sufficient effort to making their points clear and understood easily, and dramatically minimizing their impact and slowing down their growth. And one opportunity to improve presentation skills, for example, could be working for a consulting firm where kind of crisp presentation is a requirement. And so I have a scientist in my team who did that, and his presentations are excellent. His hypotheses, assumptions, conclusions are always very clear to very diverse audience, and making his presentation very impactful. And similarly, I think some of the smartest and hardest working people I know don't put sufficient efforts into building rapport and social relationship with colleagues, and it may negatively impact their collaborations, negatively impact their progress overall. So technical excellence is very, very important, but it's often not sufficient. And I wish I put more efforts to develop this kind of human skills sooner. They make huge difference. And if you're an immigrant, it's even more important because you come from different culture and you don't understand the new country. So you have to put an effort. And maybe another aspect is that I think many young people are not asking sufficient number of why questions, especially if they're not related to their kind of narrow field of work. And they're often not acknowledging what they don't know, and they're not putting enough effort to fill these gaps in knowledge, even when this knowledge is critical for fulfilling their dreams. When being challenged, they often say something like, "Oh, this is outside my pay grade," become defensive, saying something like, "Oh, it's naive to think you can get this knowledge. It's so valuable, nobody's willing to share." Or I have my manager or my CTO or my parents or whoever to think about it. But if you limit your curiosity, if you don't allow your kind of curiosity muscles to develop, then you will limit your growth opportunity. And so the idea is not just to have a growth mindset, but kind of leverage your curiosity and be actively looking to expand your horizons. Kind of be unsatisfied with information you get passively. So, and I noticed that people who ask a lot of why questions and learn how to get answers to these questions not only grow much faster professionally and personally, but also develop this ability to see the big picture, what is going on, being able to predict the future better. And if you predict the positive change that is likely to happen, then you can focus on how to help others to get to this better future sooner. And that's amazing career opportunity, but also it helps you to keep going because this is the future and you have to get there. And so I think it helps with kind of tenacity a little bit because it's coming and you just have to put more effort into making it happen.
Wow.
I think Rick and I are just absorbing this thing. We got to get our act together. We got to catch up here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny because I identified so much with what you said because as a kid, I was the annoying brat that often asked my parents like, why? And it almost just became like a common refrain in the Chen household. And, my parents would be like, oh, I'll tell you later, or, like not now. And I just taking a second to reflect on why some cultures or some societies might be so keen to kind of almost discourage that curiosity that you have as a kid. And I think that's what almost traps some adults today, right? Where they somehow over time lose that intellectual curiosity or that willingness to kind of challenge why things are the way they are, right? I think that's kind of the beauty and the wonder of San Francisco or the Silicon Valley, just generally, even beyond the Bay Area, in terms of it seems that that magic or that ethos is still in the air, right? You can almost like feel it in terms of, folks that are saying, like, why do we in 2023 still have batteries that are mined, you know, by hand, those elements that you have to use? Um, why don't we have driverless cars? Why are there still car accidents? And it's those people that are kind of like pushing the boundaries that I think we could use a lot more of. And I really appreciate your advice in terms of saying, hey, like we can actually just capture that, right? If you ask those questions and you surround yourself with folks that are like-minded or able to answer those questions, perhaps you can really advance or level up your career faster.
I mean, if you think about it, in the last, all the progress that we face now, I know have been done in the last 500 years. And I think that's because people develop the scientific approach and ask a lot of why questions. I acknowledge, okay, they don't know this, how do we get these answers? And, that's what makes science very honorable and very inspiring profession to join. And also education, because you have to spread the knowledge. But it powers innovation, and without innovation there is no progress. So it is very special, I think, because I think many challenges, many horrors that the world is facing now is honestly because of insufficient knowledge that we have about our world, or insufficient education that people maybe don't have this knowledge, and you have to spread it more equally. And so, I think spreading education around the world and more broadly in the US make it much more accessible to people are so critical for the nation and for the world. And so investment there are really important.
Right. I mean, can you give us a little preview in terms of what's next for you? Are you going to still return back to Atlanta and teach, or are you primarily focused on Sila nowadays?
I mean, I live kind of one step at a time. So at the moment, I'm focused on Sila, and so I enjoy it very much. So we'll see, what is going to happen in the future. So, but I'm committed to the company, and so I cannot imagine myself, outside Sila, for the rest of my life. If things happen, I will probably start something new from scratch. I don't think just being a professor would be sufficiently kind of satisfying for me.
That's it. You have that entrepreneurial bug now.
Yes, that's right. And I think also, many people can be fantastic professors, but only if you can lead kind of technology companies. So once you get this knowledge, once you get the skills, it's kind of would be a waste not to use them in the future.
Absolutely.
Gosh, I really appreciate you, Professor, for coming on the show and kind of painting this picture in terms of what one needs to do to start their own company, make that transition from academia into industry, but also kind of more generally betting on yourself, right? And keeping that intellectual curiosity, because it can often advance your career faster, which I think is kind of the magic words that you said for our audience. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And maybe it's not just curiosity. I think it's also, you have to like prioritize what you do, because, sometimes 20% of the effort give you 80% of the results. You have to figure out, where this 20% and maybe double down on that. And you also have to be thoughtful about not only what to do, but also what not to do, how to invest your time. Are you going to join this company or not? Are you going to join this mission or not? Maybe. And sometimes if you make very good bets at early stages, then you can propel your careers. And if you make bad bets and you bet with your time mostly, it may leave scars and discourage you from doing something greater in the future. So, but curiosity is a driver. I agree.
That's a good reminder. Thank you, Professor.
So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for The Blind Ambition. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.